Welcome to the Masters Alliance podcast. My name is Herb Perez. Today we are joined by an Olympic gold medalist who has not only achieved a gold medal in the sport of Taekwondo, the first ever in 1988, but she did it in Korea against the best of the best and beat everyone, was the first woman and American to win an Olympic gold medal. Arlene Limas stands as a testament to what you can do if you believe in yourself and you're willing to do the work necessary to achieve and overcome any obstacle that's put in front of you. Ms. Limas is an extremely successful business person and currently serves as CEO of PAVE, which is a workplace violence prevention program that educates people how they can avoid all the small aggressions, the larger aggressions, and pretty much just learn how to be better at preventing workplace violence in its many and different forms. Strap in, this is going to be an amazing podcast. Welcome to the Masters Alliance podcast, Uncut. And today I'm joined by someone that I admire and respect and just has an amazing legacy in the sport of Taekwondo and then in life. Olympic gold medalist and quite a singer, which we found out in 1988. Had no idea. Welcome to the podcast. And this is new CEO of PAVE, Arlene Limas.
Hello, Herb. How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. And, over the years, I've seen you in so many different incarnations, but still some of my favorite memories of you are as a fighter and overturning the world's view of Taekwondo, what was possible by Americans in general, but more importantly, going into the Lion's Den and beating the Lions in the Lion's Den and winning the first ever Olympic gold medal in 1988. And towards that end, I wanted to ask you that question. When did you first discover your passion for martial arts or Taekwondo, and how did that lead to your Olympic ambitions?
Well, wow. I mean, really, I don't know. I don't remember much life without martial arts. I started when I was 5. So, I mean, there's not much I remember that doesn't have a life with martial arts in it. I have 4 older brothers, and they were involved in martial arts. And I just wanted, you want to do what your older siblings are doing. And so they're not substantially, but they're older than me. I'm the baby by a lot. And I just wanted to hang out with them. And so they let me tag along for a little bit. And then I just became a little bit like the mascot for the school for the most part. Because at this time, this was pre-Bruce Lee. So there weren't any kids programs. There weren't any females in the school that I can remember. So it was me kind of running around in this martial arts class that was, for the most part, gangbangers, those who had come back from the military, and law enforcement. So what an interesting mix of people, and all men, of course, and then me running around doing whatever they told me to do. Yeah, that's how I started. So, and I fell in love with it immediately.
Well, could you describe, I mean, I was only there for parts of it, but I certainly watched you train as you prepared for the Olympics up to the games. But could you describe the training regimen that helped you prepare for the Olympics and what kind of mental or physical challenges you had to overcome?
Well, I mean, you definitely know the steps they were putting us through. I mean, it was to the point where once we landed in Korea, we had to have a sit down and just say, like, Coach, you're killing us. We know that this event is super important. But yeah, when we landed, I was elected the person to go have a talk with Coach Lee and share some of our concerns. But you know what they were putting us through. We were 3 days a week with long runs, 3 days a week with sprints. I felt like a track athlete, not a Taekwondo athlete. started off with one, major kicking session, and that turned into 2 kicking sessions a day. We were supposed to have Saturdays and Sundays off. That turned into more training. So, I mean, what the commitment and the effort that first team put in to get the results that we did in 1988. But yeah, it was incredible. It was something. I mean, I've been an athlete all my life. I have been a Chicago Park District gym rat. So I went from like bitty basketball to inside floor hockey to Little League. I mean, I've been athletic all my life. And but that was the most regimented and intense training for an event that I had ever been through. And yeah, it was crazy.
Well, you've been asked this question. I mean, I just can imagine just endlessly, but I'm going to ask it because as we get older, there are people that don't or haven't heard the stories. And I want you to share your story about, winning the gold medal. What was it like for you, and what impact did it have on your life?
Wow. I mean, in the moment, it really was a little surreal, and it landed on me kind of like just any other tournament for the most part. It landed on me like, man, this is just a big tournament. And then I remember about a week, maybe a couple days after that, I was at an event for the Olympic Committee there at the Games, and someone who had won their medal in the 60s said to me, "You won't really realize what has happened until several years distanced from this event." And that's true. It didn't really hit me till much, much later. And I think as far as it changing my life, I mean, I always say I think it gave me a bigger platform for whatever reason. You and I know it doesn't make you a special person of the world just because you win a gold medal. That doesn't happen. But it does give you a different type of platform, and people will, perk up their ear just a little more when they hear that you come to the table winning a gold medal, or even being an Olympian. So in that sense, yes, it has changed my life. It's given me a different type of platform that I would like to think I would have gotten something similar without it, but it's undeniable that platform is there for sure because of the Olympic Games.
I mean, in retrospect, were the expectations of winning and the outcomes years later what you expected, or were they different?
I think they were about what I thought. I think I had a clear idea even back in the 80s that the Olympic Games has a hierarchy, right? And there's your basketball and your track and field and your swimmers and your gymnasts, and that Olympic medal takes on a completely different life for them. But for those, the smaller sports like ours, I think the expectations landed about what I thought. The reality turned into what I thought. And I think Taekwondoists and martial artists in general, because now karate, and of course, we know judo's been in there. I think we're uniquely positioned, even different than some of the small sports, in a sense that we can do like you and I have done. We can have successful businesses, training centers, martial arts facilities that someone who is doing a different sport may not have, But yeah, I think what happened after the Olympic Games met my expectations for the most part. But the games themselves just continue to reward me, to tell you the truth. So yeah. So I'm still surprised sometimes at the opportunities I get because of the games, but directly following the games, expectations were met.
You founded your own martial arts school. Now you lead PAVE Prevention. What inspired you, your entrepreneurial drive, or what inspired you to create your own businesses?
Well, man, when I was about 13, 14 years old, the school that I was training at closed. Like in a day, like I showed up for class on Monday, and when I came back on Tuesday, it was closed, like locked up. And so my dad put some stuff together in my garage and put some mats and a kicking bag. And I started just training in there because, I was already competing a lot in the open circuit at that age. And as garages do, they get too warm, they get too hot, right? So you open your door, right? So I opened my door so that I could train. And the next thing I know, I've got like, 2 neighborhood kids squatting down to see what I'm doing. And then 5 neighborhood kids squatting around. And before I knew it, I had like 15, 16 tough inner city, ready to go kids, peers of mine, really training with me in this garage. And I just fell in love with teaching, and I learned so much. I became better. My round kick became better because I had to teach somebody how to do a round kick. Where before I was just doing a round kick because somebody said kick like that. But when I had to teach somebody how to do it, then I'm like, okay, now I know why my round kick's not working, because I'm not doing this. So it was just a really cool time for me. And I really did feel in love with coaching. I felt like almost immediately, because soon after that, I started having adults training in my garage, like, 35-year-old adults coming and wanting to learn from me. It really was clear that I had a gift, and I could motivate people and I could inspire people through the martial arts. So that's what really led me to continuing that road and opening, Power Kicks Martial Arts in Stafford, Virginia at the time. I learned the business through kind of the June Ree lineage. So I learned the business that way. I didn't quite have a business in my garage, that's for sure. I had a lot of great fighters, but it wasn't a business. I learned the business through that, like I said, Grandmaster June Ree's system, and then opened my own facility. But yeah, that's what got me there. I would say that my school was successful in spite of me, not because of me. I'm not the best business person per se. I would give everything away if I could. But yeah, it was great. And it hit 30 years. It was incredibly successful and incredibly rewarding.
So, I mean, there's got to be some hurdles that you faced when you were starting out. And how did your Olympic mindset help you overcome them?
I think any high-level athlete has a short memory. You have to have a short memory, right? You have to take everything you can out of an event or a competition or an injury or a training session. Take everything you can out of it, and then it's gone. Then forget it, right? Because you can't dwell on stuff. You can't hold on to stuff. And I think that serves us well every day in everything that we're doing. So you take the good and you move forward from that. And I think that we can't win everything. We can't win everything. But we can learn from everything that we're going through. So I take that kind of response and that kind of type of approach to everything that I'm doing, even at PAVE Prevention. That's what we do. We just keep driving. We learn from every RFP we present. We learn from every grant proposal that we give, whether we get it or we don't, and we get better. We're getting better every single day. And I think that kind of athletic or coaching approach serves me well day in and day out.
You answered my next question, which was, exactly that. I mean, that's the benefit of being an elite athlete. You've overcome, you've persevered, you've been determined, and that translates itself into the way that you do everything that you do. But let's talk about the work of PAVE. Can you explain more to our listeners about PAVE's mission and why you're addressing this serious problem of violence prevention and why it's so important to you?
Well, it actually started in my athletic career, this approach and this idea, right? So, as you know, high-level sports, probably I would say all-level sport is influenced by predatory behavior, and it's come to light in the last couple years with Nasser and other predatory coaches. And so really all of my adult life, I have been advocating for safer spaces, safer play fields for our athletes, not only Taekwondo athletes, but throughout the whole entire Olympic movement. And so that kind of advocacy allowed me to cross paths with a group of mostly women who were doing work in what they called empowerment self-defense. And this movement kind of came out of what was the feminist martial arts movement in the 70s. It really was in response to going to martial arts schools and not having anyone that looked like them, and approaches to teaching that really didn't fit them. So they started this empowerment self-defense movement, which focused, yes, on physical skills, but also focused on learning how to use your voice, understanding when you needed to set a boundary. What does inappropriate coercion look like? Situational awareness, all of these things, right? And so I thought, here we have some of the most talented physical athletes in the sport of Taekwondo, but they can't set a boundary. Physical skills is not the question. They can't set a boundary with a predatory coach. And so I immediately started pulling this type of training or these type of conversations into the traditional martial arts realm. So I'm doing that. And when I retired from coaching, just really, it had been my exit strategy for a while to come back home to Chicago after my dad passed. And when COVID hit, it really was a no-brainer for me that I needed to be back in Chicago. So I transitioned my school to my senior student there in Virginia and came home. It was like 3 weeks, and then this empowerment self-defense movement leadership came and said, we have PAVE prevention, proactive anti-violence education, ready to go. Would you take the helm of it? Would you lead it? And so it was a no-brainer for me. And we use a lot of the same principles that martial arts or coaching. I feel like I'm doing the same thing, Herb, but now I'm doing it for corporations and organizations.
And that leads me to the next question, which is, we know that you focus on workplace solutions. How do you address the unique types of violence that can occur in the workplace, and what does true prevention look like?
I will say that, we have in our mind that violence in the workplace is an active shooter situation, right? But that's not what's costing companies millions of dollars every year. What's costing corporations, organizations, it's really in the billions, Herb, if you look at the stats. What's costing that is what I call death by 10,000 paper cuts. It's the microaggressions, it's the gaslighting, it's the offhanded comments, it's the offhanded sexual comments, it's the offhanded racist comments, it's aggressiveness by omission, I'll say, right? Like you're not included in certain meetings, or it's all of those little things that get to us and then are hugely impacting productivity, cohesion, communication, everything within the workplace. So that's where we start at. We don't start like, okay, let's do an active shooter evaluation. No. We want to stop all those things that are happening day in and day out. And we do that we're heavy on assessments. We've created our own proprietary assessments around toxicity in the workplace. We are also informed by the DISC assessment. We believe strongly in the DISC assessment, which is a communication tool on how we like to communicate and be communicated with. We're having incredible success in really changing culture. That's our goal,
What successes have you seen with clients who use the PAVE prevention programming?
Yeah, wow. So for me, the closest to our heart and really our first true client was the opportunity to partner with the city of Oakland on their macro community responder program. So macro is the community responder that came out of their task force for reimagining public safety. It pairs a paramedic or EMT with a community person who's been trained in crisis intervention and then gone through PAVE training. So they're unlike any other community responder program in the country right now, is that they can offer some type of response because they have the EMT along with the community responder. So that was it's just been such incredibly rewarding work for us. We had access to them for 35 hours of training, and amazing on communication styles, understanding when you're adrenalized and how that impacts your decision making during an event or something that they've rolled up to. Of course, some physical skills, de-escalation skills, situational awareness skills, all of that was trained in the academy. In addition to that, a lot of self-care because of everything that they're dealing with day in and day out. How do they, if you can't put your own mask on, you can't put anyone else's mask on. So along that school of thought, but that training was so rewarding for us and continues to be so rewarding for us. In their first year, the impact report, over 10,000 incidents in the first year that they've responded to. So they're having amazing success. They're having a huge impact on the community they're serving.
I mean, towards that end, you know, one of the next questions I had was, you know, as a role model, just in general, and I don't want this to be a gender specific question, because I don't think that's I don't see it in that way. I have a young daughter, I have a young man, I teach young women, young men. I look at role models as role models. And so if you could, understanding the challenges that are faced by young women who are inspired by your story, but are aiming for success, what would you tell them?
Wow. I would say if we're talking about sport, I think we've gotten so hyper-focused on female athletes, just training with female athletes. And I think that's great. But I think if you speak to any female athlete right now who's having success, they didn't train with just female athletes. They trained in all gender or mixed gender situations. And, you know, I'm not meaning this as any attack or any affront to female athletes, but we can be challenged so much more and quicker, especially in the sport of Taekwondo, if we're sparring and training with men. So I think for me, that was very important, and that contributed to my success, because having trained as a young person through my teens, really only fighting boys, by the time I moved into the women's division, I had a different skill set than if I would only train with women, have trained with women. So I would say that when you can, get yourself out of that comfort zone and trained in mixed gender situations in whatever sport you're in. And then professionally, man, I just seeing what I see through PAVE now, Herb, you just got to keep fighting, man. Women just got to keep fighting. It's just unfortunately not a level playing field. You know, you just have to still be a little better, a little smarter, you know, work more longer hours. But yeah, that's it, unfortunately. And be prepared for that. Don't let it derail you. And the cream is going to rise to the top. So, you know, the proof will be in your pudding, and you'll get there, and then you can change it for someone who comes behind you. But right now, we still have to do that.
And I think that's a good point. My wife is in an industry, you know, she's an eye doctor, and majority of the practitioners are men. And then the overtone of that as well is they're usually white men. And so she finds herself, and here, you know, in California, I know you do a lot of work here. There's what I call a subtle racism or a subtle sexism, and having served in public service as well here, I would hear it behind closed doors, you know, and from people that shouldn't say it. You would think, but it's always fascinating, the subtle ways that it's done. And so some of what you spoke about resonates with me, because my wife tries to empower people in her world, and we certainly try to empower both of our children in their worlds. But in your through line, in your journey, it seems, whether it was martial arts or now what you're doing, it was about empowering, and it's about empowerment, both personal empowerment and empowering others. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what this means for you, or why it resonates with you?
You know, at a very young age, Herb, I was very fortunate. Well, I'm incredibly fortunate to have the parents that I had, to be born
Oh,
to the
you have an
parents that,
incredibly, I've met your mom, and your mom was just,
yeah, yeah,
no stronger woman than I've ever met.
yeah. I mean, you're right on that. But even my dad, in his subtle way, just so supportive and so like, um, if I came to them with something that I was uncomfortable with, or I didn't like, this is wrong. Like, I have a clear sense of justice for me. And even at like third grade, I would come home and say, man, I shouldn't have this. I shouldn't have to write this 50 times. I will not talk during the fire drill, because I wasn't talking during the fire drill, you know? And, my mom and dad empowered me at such a young age. Okay, if you don't want to write that, then you have to write to your teacher why you don't think you should write that. Which in turn, now, instead of something that would have taken me 15 minutes, now I'm writing for an hour on how unfair it was, and I wasn't doing this, and but it put it in my hands. When I felt like something wasn't clearly defined or it wasn't fair, they empowered me to act. And I think that went a long, well, I know that it's gone a long way for me. In addition to that, I don't know why, Herb, but even at a very young age, people have made a genuine effort to come to me and say, you're special, you're going to be awesome, man, for no reason. I mean, people like Roy Kerbin, who at the time was the #1 fighter in the world for point fighting. I'm fighting in the Pee Wee division, and why is he watching a Pee Wee division? I don't know. And then to be moved to come to me and give me his book and say, to the future #1 female fighter in the world, when I'm like 9. I mean, I've had several of those kind of interactions with people at a very young age. So when other people believe in you, then what the heck? You start believing in yourself. Because I know the other kids that were living on my block, they weren't believing in themselves. So I have to say that those are the things that helped me get to where I'm at right now. It's those weird things. So, I mean, I try to pay that forward like that all the time, man. I see a kid who just looks like, super coordinated on a skateboard, and I'm like, dude, you're awesome, man, So yeah, we just need people to believe in us. We need people to empower us at a young age. It's so important.
And I think, I recognize that in you. And I certainly remember when I first met you, and I understood what you were capable of, and you overcame a lot of external factors that could have affected you in getting to the Olympics, right? And so I've seen that in your life. Can you though share one of the biggest success stories you've witnessed with PAVE prevention, and how that may have transformed you, or the transformations, how they impacted you?
Well, with PAVE right now, because we are so new, I believe in my heart, we have a certain skill, and we have a skill to change culture, but we're new. So every client now that we are running programming through, and then we receive our data, post-training data, and it is so culture changing, and it's so positive. It's like, man, we're doing this. We thought this was going to work, but it is working. So really, every client of ours, we're learning something from, and then the feedback we're getting has been off the charts positive. We just finished up work in Alameda County for the Alameda County Library. We trained 120 people. We have a 3-year relationship with them, and probably will extend that to 6. But we trained 120 of their employees, and it's changing their culture. I'm going to share one success story already. So we have a situation in Dublin, and it's St. Patrick's Day. And so the whole city of Dublin, as you can imagine, does this big, huge party.
I played at the Irish pub there with a band the last couple of years. It's a huge, they love St.
Yep.
Patty's Day.
Yeah, so you get it, right? So the library there is situated right downtown. Okay. And so a lot of extra activity going on in the city and a larger than normal police presence. Okay. And so a person who comes into the library day in and day out makes his normal routine and enters into the library. He is a large man of color who is most likely unhoused, and he comes in carrying a big stick every day. He is a frequent flyer. He comes into the library every day, okay? But on this day, 2 police follow him in, 4 police follow him in, 6 police follow him in, 8 police follow him into the library. Within a few minutes, he is handcuffed, and so someone who has gone through our training, one of the library workers, goes through an evaluation that we teach them to go through. Okay, what kind of situation is this? We use a stoplight. Is this a red, yellow, or green situation? And where am I? Where am I emotionally, and am I adrenalized? So they decide, well, I'm red, but I need to do something, so I'm going to bring myself down to yellow. They ground themselves, and then they intervene. They tell the police officers, please stop this. This is a normal patron of ours. This is a member of this library system. Please let him go. He comes in like this every day. We have no problem with him, and completely de-escalated and diffused the situation. So those are the type of things that we want to happen. That's what we're trying to change.
That's okay. We're a podcast. We take all the noises as part of the world. This is reality TV and reality podcasting at its best.
I have this beautiful South Shore train that passes close to the property. So yeah, it's great. But yeah, this is what happened in Dublin. And we do some post-coaching sessions with the participants, and this is a story that they shared with us, and they literally said, that whole process of checking in with ourselves, understanding when we're adrenalized, and then intervening, being a good bystander, finding a safe way to intervene, that's what happened. And now that member, I'll also share with you, that member, although they came in every day, Herb, they really didn't talk. They grunted, and just in the last coaching session a couple of weeks ago, leadership of that branch said, we've set him up an email. He says hello to us now. So the goodwill that was built because of that situation, because that library worker intervening the way they did, beside the obvious, right? The obvious is that could have gone sideways and gotten really, really bad. But all this other goodwill that is coming now because of the way that event was handled.
Oh, listen, it's a great program. It's a great initiative. And I know you're 3 years in and running and successful. But can you tell the listeners more about how they could support your work, or are there volunteer opportunities or other ways for companies to partner with you?
Sure. I mean, we're looking, of course, for like-minded people that, want to make this type of change. The bottom line, Herb, is violence is impacting us every day. So to say that we don't have violence in our workplace, to say that we don't have violence in our schools, to say it's, for some reason we don't say it. We do. We have those things. So let's try to make it better, because we bring our whole selves every day to work, right? We bring our whole selves, or at least we hope that we can. If we're dealing with a domestic violence situation, that's going to impact our work. If we're dealing with an obnoxious coworker, that's going to impact our work, right? So this is the time to make those type of changes. So we're looking for like-minded organizations that want to make these changes. That's what we're looking for. So, you can find us on paveprevention.com. We run a podcast, which is so much fun for me to participate in. It's called Disrupting the Dominoes, and that means disrupting the dominoes of violence. We're in our second season of that, and that was a lot of fun. And yeah, we're just starting our first PAVE professional training. So we're increasing our trainer and facilitator pool. Yeah, I mean, reach out. If this is something you want to learn more about, reach out.
We're going to have to, we're going to have to reach out to you, certainly, the group that I work with, because, we see 300 to 400 Taekwondo instructors across the gamut when they try to do these trainings to become master level instructors. And I think this would be wonderful content for them. And it's actually in your neck of the woods. So I'm going to reach out to those individuals and ask them to host you and figure out what the next nexus is for it. But, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts, or is there a message or a piece of wisdom you'd like to leave the listeners with?
I mean, we're just at such nutty times right now. If we could just take a breath before we enter into situations, and even when we respond to a question, or just take a breath, man, because it's just nutty right now. We need like a worldwide de-escalation. So,
well, it's no doubt you've hit it right on the head. These are, I wonder and worry for the world in general, considering the things that go on just in general, just not even locally, the quiet, passive aggressive hostilities to one another, to people in general, and then the things that are said when you leave the room are more concerning to me, because it is what it is. But hopefully efforts like yours and people like you who take the strength that they've gathered through life and good parenting and good education and then great experiences, and obviously, listen, you're still, in my opinion, one of the greatest, if not the greatest Olympian that we've had that's won a gold medal. And you've taken that platform that you described and shared it with so many people. And I always see you still with your foot in the pool and your finger in the temperature of the water, willing to speak out on things that others won't speak on. And so we need more people like you, and we need you to inspire more people to make sure that they continue to do the work. And I think what people forget, and I'm sure this is part of your training, is when you stand idly by the side, you become a cohort, or you become a co-conspirator. You need to, it's not enough just to be there and not say anything. You need to say something or do something. And it's only through action that you prevent bad action. So, but listen,
I think that's been happening worldwide, right? Not only in sport, but everybody just kind of turns around and goes, but no, we can't do that. We can't, man. It's so many people are just, their lives are just being derailed.
And I don't think anybody would say Arlene Limas just stands by and doesn't do anything. And we've only touched on, a handful of, this could have been an entire podcast about your experiences as an athlete and the things that you've shared with others. And we just glossed over the amazing success you had at Parakicks when you were there, and the amount of athletes that you developed on a national and international level. But I really wanted to focus on this effort because I'm always interested in how people take their experience and knowledge and then transform it into another impactful place in their life. And you've certainly done that.
Oh, well, thank you, Herb. Thank you. We're trying.
Well, I'm going to make sure we make all the links happen on this so people can get back to you. I want to invite you back on another podcast we're going to have on some other subjects, because I think it would be really important to have you as part of that conversation. But on behalf of, Martial Arts Alliance Podcast Uncut, just thank you again for taking the time out. I know you're extremely busy.
No problem. Thank you, Herb.
Thank you so much.
Well, I told you that was going to be a great podcast, and it was. Over the years, I've come to know Miss Limas in many different forms and in many different venues, and she always maintains herself in the same way. Ethically, morally correct, but more importantly, as a role model for others to follow and to set an example for others to emulate. Her latest venture, PAVE, is certainly making a difference, and you can too. Take a moment to reach out, look at PAVE, and see what they're doing and see the great work they're doing, teaching people how to avoid and not become part of the problem, but rather become part of the solution. We need more people like Arlene Limas who are willing to take the time to change the world and follow their passion and make a difference for others. Again, this has been a Masters of Lies podcast uncut. Please join us for our other podcast as well. And I am Herb Perez.